Good afternoon and welcome everyone to this press conference from the 47th annual meeting of the World Economic Forum here in snowy Davos. Welcome here in the room. I see there's more gentlemen and ladies joining us. Welcome, don't be shy, take a seat. And welcome to everybody who's joining us on the live stream, to our global audience there. Welcome to this press conference. We're joined here today and it's our great pleasure for me to introduce to you the Vice President of Nigeria, Mr. Yemi Osinbajo. I've been told by colleagues from Nigeria that that's the way to pronounce the name. Apologies. I hope I did it right. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give the floor to you, Mr. Vice President. Tell us about Nigeria, tell us about your expectations here at Davos and what your message is to the assembled business and public sector and civil society leaders here in Davos, please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to this. Let me just very quickly say that everyone sort of knows that that Nigeria is, in GDP terms, possibly the largest economy in Africa, and also that in the past 3 quarters, Nigeria has been in a recession, and that after that recession continues, the economy contracted by about 1.8% in the last quarter of 2015. But we've developed a robust economic recovery and growth plan, not just to take the country out of recession, but more importantly, to set us on a path of sustained growth. That economic recovery and growth plan is very important to us because it's also an opportunity for us to address some of the structural problems that the economy has. Many would probably know that the largest source of revenue for the largest source of government revenue is oil, and also the largest foreign exchange earner. And that in the past year, aside from the drop in oil prices, we've had disturbances in the Niger Delta, which has led to a sharp drop in production, especially in the last year. And the drop was so sharp that we're losing as much as 60% of the revenues. But all of that is certainly improving now, and part of the economic recovery and growth plan is to address the issues in the Niger Delta, many of which we're coming to terms with already, and we're seeing production coming back up. And we're also looking at the opportunities that this offers for diversification, given the fact that the Nigerian economy, as I pointed out, is almost a single source foreign exchange earner and largest revenue. In fact, oil is not just the largest revenue earner, but also accounts for practically 52% of non-oil revenues as well. I mean, it accounts for roughly about 52% of non-oil revenues as well. So it really is crucial. But we're looking at diversifying. We're looking at agriculture, the whole agro-allied value chain. We're looking at petrochemicals. We're also looking at manufacturing, which is quite critical, as well as other sectors other sectors that we think would be particularly important. In manufacturing, for example, EPZs are very important, and that's one of the key ways by which we're trying to focus attention and focus our energies on manufacturing. And we think that would create opportunities. We're going to create opportunities both for local investment and foreign investment. I don't want to go into a monologue. I was hoping that this would be interactive, so I think I'll probably just stop at this point and hope that I'll get a few questions. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. And let's follow that recommendation. We have a microphone in the room, so if I can see a show of hands who's interested to ask a question. Yes, the gentleman in the middle here. If you could state your name and organization for the sake of our online audience,
sure.
Please.
Good afternoon. Reuters News Agency, Dmitry Zhdanikov. I'm here. Just a couple of questions. One, you've mentioned the oil production. Would it be possible to say where the current production stands at the moment, and give us a bit of an update on talks with the militants in the Delta? And we've seen lately new statements from Avengers, so the oil markets are beginning to get concerned about this again. So where do you stand in talks with the militants, and why there haven't been no meetings since Mr. President went there in early November? That's my first question. If I could follow up with another one.
Thank you very much. Just pass the microphone over to the gentleman here in the front, please.
Hi, Omar Benyeda from African Business Magazine. There was talk that Nigeria wanted to go and tap international capital markets. So I just wanted an idea of timelines in terms of, or timeframes in terms of when you're thinking of going, how much you're thinking of raising, and where you're thinking of raising this capital.
Thank you very much. We had a question on oil, and I'll leave it to you which
Thank you.
order you want to answer.
Yes. Starting with oil production, we're close to about 1.7, 1.8, but we think that that could improve very quickly once we're able to sort out all of the issues in the Niger Delta. Now, the militancy in the Niger Delta and ongoing discussions, as a matter of fact, just yesterday, I was in the Niger Delta, and that was possibly the first direct engagement at the level of the presidency with individuals there. So, especially in the Delta area itself, I was in the Baramatu Kingdom, which is one of the areas where there has been considerable unrest. Also in Warri, where, of course, there are numerous facilities, talking directly to the youths and leaders in the Delta region. So I think that we're actively engaged. Of course, a lot of it cannot necessarily be publicized, but we're very actively engaged in negotiations, and we think that the engagement, especially the fact that we're talking to all of the important groups. You know, I'm sure that you might know that we had spoken earlier to the Pan Delta Forum. The Pan Delta Forum is a forum of leaders and youths and civil society groups in the Niger Delta, including the various ethnicities in the Niger Delta. And they are accredited by practically all of the groups in the Niger Delta, and we've been speaking to them. They presented a 16-point, what they described as dialogue issues, and we think that is a sensible roadmap as to what to do and what steps to take to resolve many of the issues in the Delta. So we're very actively engaged. Regarding the Euro bond, yes, I think that regarding the capital markets issue, of course, there's a Euro bond offer which we're doing at the moment, and we think that we should conclude some at least by early February, by mid-February. Is $1 billion.
Thank you very much. There was a question from the gentleman in the back there. If you can get the microphone over there, please.
Hi, my name is Tim Cohen. I'm from Business Day in Johannesburg. If you'd forgive a little bit of a colloquial question, I just wondered whether you had any thoughts on why the relationship between South Africa, the diplomatic and business relationship between South Africa and Nigeria has declined so badly, and what can be done to fix it. I mean, some of the South African companies seem to have got into a lot of trouble in Nigeria, it seems to me very disappointing for the two biggest economies on the continent to be at odds in this way.
Yes.
Thank you.
Check. Go ahead.
You want to
Yeah, I'll take
the one directly?
Okay. First, I think when you look at the isolated cases, it would seem that the relationships between countries, South Africa and Nigeria, have gone quite sour. But those are some individual cases, and I'm sure that you probably have in mind MTN and MTN in particular. But I don't think that that's the total picture. I don't think that that's representative of what is going on. There are several South African companies in Nigeria. The business environment in Nigeria especially allows for 100% ownership by investors. So that's that's very attractive for South African companies, and there's so many that function in Nigeria. And I want to say that MTN, was a violation of a code of regulations that they also worked in developing. It wasn't some arbitrary imposition of a fine. They actually were participants in developing developing the regulations, and they were given sufficient time to even rectify their conduct or modify their conduct one way or the other. But as it turns out, that was not done. And so this was really, and I don't think that MTN itself has complained about complained that they were treated unfairly. Of course, it was a large fine, but that was even the fine itself is defined by law. It's a daily fine and it's defined by law. So I think that there is a clear sense in which one would say that yes, sometimes a foreign company may run into trouble, especially a notable foreign company in an economy where, obviously they're doing so well. But I don't think it's any kind of hostility. I think that the Nigerian government and business have embraced MTN. MTN has been in Nigeria now for close to almost 16 years or so, odd. And they've been doing very well indeed. And I believe that they'll continue to do very well. But I think that if you take the isolated incidents, as I said, you may make that conclusion. But that's not the general story. That's not the general narrative.
Thank you very much. Before we take more questions from the floor, I need to squeeze one in that came in through social media earlier. Most of you might be aware that the forum has this young community of millennials, the global shapers, and they're very active in Nigeria as well. For example, a great hub in Abuja, and they've been begging me and said, "Can you ask our vice president to send us a message?" Kind of. So what do you think? I mean, the forum has only started, the 47th annual meeting, but what would be your message to the young people in Nigeria to take away from this meeting, and also from the theme of responsive and responsible leadership?
I think that people say about young people that they're leaders of tomorrow, but I think that it's very clear that they're leaders of today, because really the future has actually arrived. And so many of the young people that I come across in Nigeria have shown such tremendous versatility, such tremendous talent and energy. And with the digital age and with all of the advantages of today, they are clearly in the driver's seat in so many different respects. I mean, they control opinion on social media. They control the direction of technology with the innovations and all of those, and all of the new things that are going on. And in many senses, they are defining entrepreneurship, defining governance. So I think that this season belongs to them. This time belongs to the young, and I'm not so sure that they need anyone's permission to do the great things that they're doing. Certainly, they don't need the permission of any older generation to do the incredible things they're doing. And all I want to say is that at least the government of Nigeria is solidly behind them, and we expect that the coming years will see even greater achievement. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I think we had two more questions here, and I think after that we also have to close, but please let's take these two questions. The microphone is there.
Sorry, I just wanted to point out that the Eurobond is March, the expected period is March 2017, March, not February, March. Sorry.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Vice President, can I ask you what steps the government is planning to take to unify the exchange rates? Because we have such a big gap between the official and unofficial exchange rate, and that's surely really having a bad effect on your economy. When can
If
we
you,
expect?
excuse me, if you could also state your name and organization for the sake
I'm
of the
Sujata
audience.
Rao with Reuters.
Thank you very much.
Well, let me just say first that the central bank is responsible for monetary policy generally, and we have a structure that allows the central bank independence by legislation. But of course, this is a concern. The gap between the official and the parallel market is a concern, and as we pointed out, it isn't helpful. So if you look at our economic recovery and growth plan, it is clearly the expectation that this will be redressed, and this is a conversation that we're having with the central bank itself, and I believe that some adjustments need to be made, and that we must advance towards an exchange rate policy that closes that gap as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, can you use the microphone?
Sorry, but is there any indication of when this might happen?
Very soon, I hope.
Thank you very much.
As I said, I'm not in charge of monetary policy, the central bank, but the conversation is on, as I've said, and there's a lot of hope that we'll be able to resolve some of these issues as quickly as possible.
So did we have one last question there in the middle? Has the question been answered? Well, there, the gentleman. Please.
Hi, good day, Mr. Vice President. Lindis van Zelle from the African News Agency. You visited the Niger Delta yesterday, I believe, eh?
Yes.
So in your engagement with communities, and I think you mentioned that this is probably the first time from a presidential office initiative that there's been that type of engagement. When you deal with communities that for as long as they can remember have stood on oil production as means of income and livelihood, what is the response or the reaction from them when you talk about new industries, because oil is not going to be around forever, and they need to start thinking about other alternative means of income and sustainability? So just from your initial interaction with them, how do you think it was perceived or received?
Yes.
Thank you.
In fact, one of the, I'm not so sure whether you're alluding to the fact that was a message that I actually took to the communities, that we're not always going to have the kind of value that oil has today, and that in another, how many years? I mean, some say 30 years, some are even saying much less. Oil may be less valuable than it is today. And that we really need to be, first, I mean, to them, is really more, let's take advantage of the window that we have, and that we cannot afford to continue the kind of militancy that leads to low oil production, and time is running out. So I think that message is one that resonates with the communities. Their response to it, has been very positive. I think that all they're saying is, okay, let's engage, let's talk about this. There are issues around justice, there are issues around resource control. They have their own issues. But I think it's a very sobering message, and the facts are all there for everyone to see. So they know this is not to frighten anyone or to push anyone to negotiations in any way. And I think it really does resonate with them.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for watching, because it is time to close this press conference. Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for joining us here today and for answering all the questions. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.